So, Mark, tariffs seem to continue to be the hot button issue across everything news related, but specifically because we talk about real estate and housing on this show, the housing industry. So, Canada imposed the 25% electrical tariff on the U.S., and I believe that affects some of the states that are on the Great Lakes. And then, so what Canada did in response to that, or what the U.S. rather is going to do in response to that, is impose a 25 to 50% tariff on aluminum and some other building products. And the greater question is, what is that going to mean for housing and building costs? Because one of Trump's main focuses in his second term as president is to get housing costs down. This seems on face value like it might cause things to go the other direction, at least in the short term. So what do you know about the subject?
So there's a couple of things, I mean, if we really wanted to boost our views, we would just change both of our names to Tariff.
Right, yeah.
Because right now,
two guys talking tariffs.
Exactly. We would get more, half the world would watch.
Right.
But in reality, yeah, this tariff war has gotten to be something else. We have the tariffs, we don't have the tariffs, it's going to be 25, no, it's going to be 50, it's going to be this, that, whatever. Couple of things to keep in mind. Number one, your logical first thought is, well, that's just new construction.
Right.
And it's not, because, people that have houses for a long time, they remodel them.
Sure.
And so they also use building materials, the steel and aluminum and lumber. And, lumber is the most popular one, right? Because that's the most common product. And I think we get 73% or so of our lumber from Canada. So you can see how it can make a big impact if we put a 50% tariff on, metal and steel and aluminum and lumber as well. I mean, you would think it's drive the cost up in the U.S.
Right. Well, inflation is high to begin with. And so the cost of everything at face value is increased. And then when you tack a tariff on top of that, of course, the builders aren't just out of the kindness of their heart going to absorb that extra 50% cost. They're going to pass it off to the buyer. Or if you're getting a remodel done, it's going to be passed off from whichever general contractor is doing your remodel. So it's going to be interesting. I get what Trump is trying to do. He's trying to almost play a game of chicken with the tariffs. You're going to put a tariff on us, we're going to put a reciprocal one on you. We're going to go triple digit tariffs in some instances, as he said. We have the tariffs on Mexico. We know we get a lot of our appliances that go into, not so much the building materials, but more the appliances from Mexico. So I think his ideal goal, because you can only do so much until the midterms roll around, right? So something's got to give before the midterms, and Trump he doesn't want to have the second leg of his final presidency be a lame duck sort of situation for the final 2 years, where the House and the Senate just sway majorly in favor of the Democrats. So he's got to have some sort of plan for how we're going to do this temporarily, reset the tariff sort of situation with all the countries across the world. Because in reality, it is not great that we send our goods to certain countries and they charge us a tariff, and then we accept their goods basically for free with no tariff. So I understand the sentiment here. My concern is, how long is this going to last? And in the short term, how much is it going to actually increase the costs of everything?
Well, and there's another thing. Think back to the first presidency. It was very much about make America great again, right?
Right.
And, American made in America was a big deal.
Yes.
And so to that end, he did issue an executive order March 1st, saying that we need to expand production of U.S. timber, U.S. lumber.
Right.
Which in theory would help that situation, right? Because if the lumber coming out of Canada is it's taxed at 25 or 50 or whatever percent, it's more expensive than domestic lumber. So now domestic lumber becomes more attractive.
Yeah.
Right. And so, which I don't think that's a bad thing. I mean, I'm all for promoting America, but there's some complications there.
Sure.
Right? Environmental concerns being one of them.
Yes.
Endangered species, things like that he's, kind of saying, well, maybe we need to relax some of this. I don't know enough about that to know if that's a good idea or not.
Right.
You know, my family was in the lumber business back in the day. And back then it was kind of, there were not as many regulations and whatever. So it was full throttle all the time.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, also it makes sense too that, if we could produce enough lumber here, building America and American industry is very much one of Trump's top priorities.
Yeah.
The reality is we do need to get things from other countries because we don't have enough of it, or it just costs too much to get it here, or whatever the case may be. Another country does a good or services better than we do, and so we resource that out. The main issue with housing, because that's obviously what we talk about on this channel, is that what's causing housing prices to be where they are right now. And it's a couple of different things, but one of those things is inventory. So when supply is greater to meet the demand, you usually have a settling down in prices. And even though interest rates have been high, there's still enough buyer demand to satisfy the inventory as it currently sits right now. So what's the solution? Your Meritage Homes, your D.R. Hortons, your Lennars, and then the smaller local builders have to build more houses. So if you're wanting to do American made and American materials, I love that. I'm an American. I think that's a fantastic thing. But if we already don't have enough of whatever resource it is, you name it, lumber, aluminum, steel, whatever the case may be, appliances from Mexico, and we're now going to increase the inventory and increase the supply to meet the demand and help bring the costs down, then we're going to need more of those things, would be conventional thinking, which means we have to buy more of those things from other countries, which means we're subject to these large tariffs.
Kind of a long explanation, but you're right. I mean, the home builders, National Association of Home Builders right now has an index of basically builder confidence. How are they?
Right.
How confident they are in the future? How confident they are in putting their product out there that it will get bought? And that index has come down about 5 points. In other words, they're less confident about the future, and then you can see why.
Yeah.
Okay, today it's going to be 25%, but you know what? Next week it's going to be 50, or we might pause it. Let's pause it for a week, and then no, we're going to give it. There's so much uncertainty in what's going on with these tariffs.
Yeah.
That it's causing problems with, how do you price your house?
It's hard. It's difficult. Yeah.
And in home building, a house takes what, 3 to 6 months to build, or longer, depending on where it is and what it is. I've got some friends building a house for 2 years now.
Yeah.
But it's gigantic, so okay, that makes sense. But when they started, lumber was one price, and now that they're almost finished, it's completely different.
Well, you have to talk about competition too, because it's these new builders. They're not just competing against other new builders. You have these master plan communities, and we have a ton of them here in the Houston area, where when you drive into the community, you see where the model home section of that community is. And Lago Mar, just to give an example, in Texas City, I think there's 19 builders in there. So they're competing against each other.
Right.
But what else are they competing against? They're competing against the neighborhood next door or the other neighborhood right up the road that was finished building out in 2022, which these homes are comparable. A 2022 home and a 2025 home, not that much difference. If you're talking about a 1960 home versus a 2025 home, okay, there's a big difference there. But when you're talking about a matter of a couple of years, this home, 2021, 2022 build, was not built during this period of tariffs and was not built during this period of huge inflation. So they can offer their home, and presumably the homeowner has enough equity in the home to where they can sell it, they can make a profit, they can roll that into the down payment for their next home, so they can go into the market at $350,000, $375,000, whereas the builder who's incurring all of these added costs because of the tariffs, they're not able to sell a home that's comparable for that price because it costs them too much to build it. I mean, do I have that right? And guys, before we finish up this conversation, Mark and I just want to ask if you're enjoying the content, if you wouldn't mind subscribing to the channel, that helps us out tremendously. We're on a mission to get to 1,000 subscribers, and if you're finding value out of this, we would certainly appreciate your support.
Thank you for watching. Yeah, well, and it's funny because when people talk to me about new builds and this bright shiny new house.
Yeah.
I don't know, I had 6 or 7 houses that I've had in my lifetime. The two I had the most problems with were the brand new ones.
Yep.
Because what are the chances they get it all right the first time around? There's
Almost
a million
none.
parts that go into it, right? It almost never goes together exactly right. And so now the least problems were with a house that was built in the 40s.
Right.
Like, yeah, nothing was going to knock that thing over. It was so well built. And even the house that we have now, was built in the 80s.
Yeah.
But the guy that built it wanted it built more stout and whatever, and it's not going anywhere, right? But newer homes, newer construction, is the quality like it used to be? I don't know. But I do know that if I bought a house, it's kind of like a car, like after a couple of years, all the little kinks are worked out. All the
Yeah.
bugs are worked out. It's probably, it might be even a better investment that way anyway.
Sure.
But you don't have the shiny new house, and you don't have the nails on the street and all the other things that come with new construction either. So I don't know. But regardless, the Home Builders Association is saying it's going to be something like $7,500 to $10,000 additional in price.
Right.
Which is tough when they have building inventory now. I mean, it used to be they didn't have inventory building because they were just selling them as they built them.
Yes.
There wasn't a whole lot of inventory on the ground. Now that inventory is starting to stack up, we've had, and it's kind of affecting, mortgage, real estate, building, all the related industries.
Yes.
Like we've had elevated rates now since, October 22. I mean, we're going on 3 solid years of this.
Right.
It's not getting significantly better. So as that happens, these builders now, they're running out of patience and time and
Yeah.
money and all that. So yeah, I mean, at some point something's got to give,
Yeah.
And so then to be hit with these tariffs, now the house has got to be $10,000 more because the lumber costs $10,000 more to build.
Exactly. And I was speaking to a new builder the other day when I was doing a walkthrough with a client who was buying, I won't say the builder's name because I don't want to air out what they're doing in their laundry. But effectively, he said, we have paused building new homes. Mm-hmm. The homes that we have built already or that have the structure, we're finishing them out. But we're going to just wait because we built enough inventory that we think we have 3 months worth of inventory ahead of us that we can sell through before we really have to start making more homes to satisfy the demand that's coming, 3 months after that. And so their hope is that this tariff stuff cools down and they don't have to go buy lumber and steel and aluminum and appliances at these elevated prices, that this may be just a short-term thing. We saw with COVID, with the stock market, it tanked and then it came roaring right back. So a lot of people are thinking that these tariffs might be the same thing where it's causing the market to go down, the crypto market, the speculative stuff. It's causing housing prices to go up, but this may be a temporary thing that's adjusting the way that the U.S. does business with other countries, and then long term it might be good. So who knows? But I guess time will tell.
Time will tell. I mean, it's an uncertain time. But what we keep hearing from Trump is, you got to go through some pain to get to the other side.
Right.
And so hopefully, he's right. If you think about it, you go to the dentist. Everybody loves going to the dentist, right?
Yep.
And I give my dentist a hard time all the time. Like, yeah, nobody loves to come see you, but the reality is, like, okay, if you got an impacted, infected tooth and you need a root canal, nobody likes getting a root canal.
Right.
It's painful, but afterwards, it's so much better.
Exactly.
And that's the hope, I think, is that, okay, we're going to go through some pain, maybe a little inflation. We're going to go through tariffs and maybe, we're going to pause tariffs on automobiles, but maybe we're going to put it back in effect on April 2nd. I don't know. There's not, there's a lot of uncertainty in a lot of industries, including the housing market.
Yeah.
The hope is that, as you were suggesting earlier, like it'll work out in the end and we'll be better for it.